Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Alien vs. Predator Galaxy podcast, the original Alien and Predator podcast. This is regular host Aaron Percival.
And this is co-host Adam Zeller.
And we are also joined by a special guest today. We are honored to have the writer of this beauty. And for those of you listening rather than watching, it is AvP Thicker Than Blood. And it is Jeremy Barlow on the show today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
So we only normally go and annoy the creative people making these things when it's something that we love, a particular entry that we really enjoy. And as of recording, I haven't done the written interview yet, the written review yet, sorry. And we haven't done our podcast on it yet. So the listeners might not know just how much I really enjoyed this one.
Thank you.
But
that's flattering.
You will get a very glowing written review after, and probably before this interview goes up, actually. But at some point. So
thank you so much.
This one, I don't want to say it surprised me because I don't want that to come across as
well, that's actually there. Oh, say it. I mean, that's the reaction that I wanted when I sat down to really do this. I knew I was taking a chance with setting, the way the story was set up and the characters, and I thought that, the fans are either gonna really like it or really hate it. And so I was sweating there. It's been all year. Like issue 2 came out in January.
Oh, yeah.
And you're only halfway through the story at that point. And I was kind of reading the reaction, and a lot of it was like, oh, I hate Maria so much, and it's like, well, you're only halfway. Give it some. So that I'm actually, that is the reaction that I like to hear, that you were surprised by it.
Yeah, it was the same for me. I ended up really enjoying it myself, and I do feel like the second half really brought together the whole thing for sure. But yeah, I mean, I'm right with you, Aaron. It was probably one of the best, AvP comics we've had in a long time. Thanks. I mean, there haven't really been that many standalone ones. I think, was there after the crossovers with Fire and Stone and Life and Death? Yeah, I think this is the only one we've had since even 3 World War. That was a crossover too. So it's been a while. But no, as a self-contained story, this was absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
It's funny because I always say, we're an AvP podcast, we're an AvP website, an AvP outlet, whatever. But the amount of Alien versus Predator stuff we actually get to cover is
not much. Yeah,
pretty minimal.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think it was like every other page I was going, oh damn,
thank you,
reading through it. Yeah. So yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, well, I can only take so much credit for that. I mean, Doug Wheatley is amazing. So
and Rain as well.
Yeah, they're both just incredible. I would see the pages back and I would just be like, man, how did I get this lucky to work with these guys?
Yeah, another one of our favorite comics, both Aaron and I, is The Destroying Angels from Aliens. Yeah, so it was good to see him come back.
Yeah. I lost my shit when I saw the creative team on this one because I really like Dust to Dust as well. I really like Rain's work on that.
Oh, and,
combine Destroying Angels is one of my all-round favorite comics, narratively and artistically. So
yeah, and that's been a while. That one was quite a while ago, right?
Oh yeah, late 90s.
Yeah, I think something like that.
And because I don't think Doug came back until he did some of the variant covers for Life and Death.
Yeah, he was doing a lot of Star Wars with Randy Stradley. That's kind of where he's been, and I think he did he did some Avatar stuff as well. But yeah, he's been working in other universes, so it was awesome to see him come back for this one.
Bring him back, yeah, definitely. So, we've already had a little bit of a natter, but first things first, Jeremy. Thank you for taking the time to come and chat with us today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before we get into the nerdy nitty gritty of why did you do this and why did you do that?
Okay, yeah.
Of Thicker Than Blood, could you just tell our listeners and our viewers a little bit about yourself outside of Alien and Predator?
Yeah, I've been writing professionally for about 12 years, I guess, and I do a lot of licensed books. Like I mentioned before, I've done Star Wars, Call of Duty. I'm blanking on some of the other. Mass Effect. I did a lot of Mass Effect comics. and it's kind of become my thing. I like to, I don't know, I like to sort of go into a situation where the world is already built and then find an emotional entry point. And I was an editor at Dark Horse for a while. I was an associate editor there until about 2008, and then just kind of went off on my own, and that's it. I live in Portland, Oregon. I've got a wife and a dog and a cat. And
I mean, you have to if you work for Dark Horse.
Yeah, it's pretty much. I think if you work in comics, you have to live in Portland. But yeah, I was homeschooled. I grew up really working class. My dad's an electrician. So there was a lot of I had a lot of anxiety growing up about, I wanted to be creative and I wanted to write, but I had no path. I had nobody, I had no role model or example. So I sort of scraped my way out of that. And I feel like I'm finally sort of figuring it out.
So how long have you been writing for the industry?
Well, I started at Dark Horse in 2001, and then I left Dark Horse in 2008, and I've been writing professionally since then.
So you didn't write when you were an editor?
I did a little bit. I when other writers would blow their deadlines, I would write fill-in issues. I felt really guilty about that because I didn't want to look like I was taking away work from freelancers. So I wrote under a pseudonym. A lot of stuff I wrote under a pseudonym. But I just found that Lucasfilm liked the work that I was doing, and Dark Horse liked the work that I was editing full time, and then I was writing on the weekends and at night. And I got to a point where I realized I'm doing 2 full-time jobs here, so I should just pick one. Pick the one that doesn't have the steady paycheck is the one I went for.
Yeah. So always the danger of the creative stuff.
Yeah. And it's been, I've been doing it long enough now to not freak out. My freakouts, sometimes I'll go months without an assignment, and it used to be if it was 6 weeks, I would just think I'm done. It's over. They figured me out. But yeah, it's just, it comes in waves and it comes and goes. And I'm married. My wife has a stable job and a good salary. So that helps out a lot.
Yeah.
That's the key if you want to write professionally, is just marry up.
And outside of Alien and Predator, then you've done, would you say mostly Star Wars? Would that be more prolific? I would say outside?
Probably Star Wars and Mass Effect. I've done a lot of Mass Effect. A lot of video game tie-in stuff. Call of Duty, like I said. I wrote a mini series based on Metalocalypse, the Adult Swim series from 8 years ago about the death metal band. Yeah, it was great. It was one of the best jobs I ever had.
Did you do the Black Ops comics?
Yeah, Black Ops 4.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those were the online promotional comics a couple of years ago. So yeah, I just, my heart's in AvP and Star Wars, but I try to, every assignment that I get, I just try to find what is an emotional hook that I can find in this world, and then just sort of dig into that.
Okay, well, that's cool. So to go more specifically to, our favorite franchises, one of our traditions on the show is to ask our guests about the first time they ever got to experience the franchises. Now, normally we'll be talking about one or the other, so it'll be a very specific. But you get Alien versus Predator, so you've got all 3 here.
Yeah,
so, can you remember the first time you ever came across our favorite extraterrestrials and their, endless clash?
Yeah, so it was Aliens. Aliens was the first one that I saw. I was about 11 years old, and they were premiering it on cable, HBO or Showtime, whatever channel it was, and there was this big buildup, Saturday, Aliens. And I just begged my parents, please I just want to see this movie so bad. And I must have been 12 because I think they were like, well, you're a man now. I think you can handle it. So all week long, I'm so excited. And then I finally sit down Saturday night and just blew my mind. It was so good. Start to finish, just all of it was so good. And then I became insufferable after that. I was just all my friends. Anytime we'd go out on a bike ride, I'm just, plot, start to finish, everybody, to the point where they were just like, shut up. We're so, our parents won't let us watch this movie. Just, you've ruined it. But from there, and I think my younger brother, Mark, was a huge Schwarzenegger fan. And so when Predator rolled around, I think we saw that one a little bit later. But yeah, that was another one that was just like, man, how does this quintessential 80s awesomeness, So it was Aliens, and then I think it was Predator, and then probably Predator 2, which I have a soft spot for. I went back and revisited it recently. I was like, yeah, this movie is weird and great. It's set in, I don't even, you guys can remember the year that it's set. It's set in the future, but everybody dresses like a 1950s detective.
97.
Yeah. 97.
The far future of 1997.
Yes. Oh, it's so good.
It came out in 90, I think, late 90.
Yeah. So it'd be us projecting forward to 2028, and everybody dresses like they're in the 90s, right? So it was I didn't see Alien until later, I think. And then that was a whole different experience. Like that is just I can't decide if Alien or Aliens is my favorite of the franchises because they're both so good in different ways.
They were both so impactful in their own way.
Yeah.
Genre defining in certain ways. It's the eternal struggle: is Alien or Aliens?
Yeah. I think with Thicker Than Blood, I definitely drew more from Alien. I really wanted to, there's moments in Alien like when Ripley's going back for Jonesy, and that tugging of your heart where you just think she's doomed, and that's the single alien in that was just so frightening. And I wanted that. I wanted more of that.
Yeah, it's not very common that in this kind of a tease of one of our questions coming up that you have just one alien in an AvP comic. I don't know if we've honestly ever. Well, no, there's been a couple, I think. Maybe the AvP comics that have one alien, Aaron.
Yeah.
Can you think of any?
Not very many. No, because I mean, it was always branded Aliens versus Predator, so you normally got more of that Aliens tone and plural. Oh my god. I'll stick my tongue in here. Plural. Oh my god.
Plurality.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeremy. But last couple of years, I think they rebranded two, Alien versus Predator. But you normally ended up with multiple. So that was one of the things. Again, Adam's teased one of the questions later. But that's one of the things that stuck out about Thicker Than Blood.
Yeah. So again, it was just like I think that I love Aliens, but it's the more you escalate the conflict between. I mean, when you've got your main character as a space marine with a pulse rifle. A single alien doesn't feel that threatening, so you've got to add more aliens and then you've got to add more predators and you've got to add more Marines. And it just becomes this arms race of more. And I really liked how terrifying a single xenomorph is. Like if any one of us saw a single xenomorph, we'd lose it. We totally lose it. It's terrifying. And especially because they let us use the big chap design, which I think is one of the best.
You went even further and you did. There's a I forgot to actually write in a question about this. There's a big sort of friendly debate on our boards as to big chap's hidden skull.
Oh yeah.
So are you pro skull, anti skull kind of thing? And with this one, Doug went for the skull, and
he went for the skull. Yeah. That was all Doug and Randy. Like when I saw the design back, I was like, oh man, yes, please, I love it.
And some of the movements that it was kind of shown making in the panels very much reminded us of Alien Isolation, the game.
Yeah.
And that game for us, it was like super significant in terms of showing how the alien could be scary again.
Yeah.
And I definitely think that was kind of evoked in the comics here. Very much like when it creeped out of the door in the Predator spaceship. And there were a couple other moments like when it hopped towards the younger android character where it just like reminded me of the movement it made in that game.
Yeah, the challenge that we had when we started out, I bit off a lot for Doug and I. What I really wanted to do is I wanted to do a story that was set in a really bright environment, but I still wanted it to be scary. I really wanted to take all of those elements, because when you think of Alien or Predator or AvP, it's always dark corridors and water dripping down chains and it's haunted house. And when we started out, I'm like, let's see if we can do this. Let's see if we can have a setting that's basically like a Las Vegas hotel in space and see if we can still have a scary alien. And Doug just knocked it out of the park.
I gotta say, and Aaron will tell you this, like for years, I was like, I really want to see like an Alien or AvP story set on like a cruise ship in space. Like I've been wanting that idea for a long time. So to finally just see it, I was like, whoa, they did it.
Yeah. So. I picked up on it somehow. Yeah.
So that one alien thing. Then it wasn't just that you had a single alien. It was that the entire dynamic of the way these, the way these AvP stories normally play out was was just flipped around. You know, you were saying it's the Marine, and you throw in a ton of aliens to up the up the tension, up the stakes, but it normally goes, a bunch of predators destroy an absolute metric ton of aliens storming at them. I mean, just thinking about like War the other day, and the way that particular story started, and literal walls. But in here, you had a single alien that was an absolute beast. This was Isolation's portrayal. This was the way Big Chap is portrayed in Alien in our heads on the page. So was that reversal conscious?
I mean that's the version of the xenomorph that I like the most, is the Alien 3, for all of its problems, like the single xenomorph in that I think is terrifying. And I like the idea of just this terrifying beast. And the other thing is, when I got the assignment, I just thought, like, people have done the Marines in the wave after wave of aliens. I'm not going to top it. Like, I'm not going to do better than that, because it's great. It's already out there. So what can I do that goes in a different direction? And what can I do that's emotional? Like, I really wanted to do, like, one of my notes to Doug is like, let's break people's hearts and gross them out at the same time if we can, so I just started to thinking about, like, well, what is the opposite of that? What is the opposite of the Marines and the multitudes of everything? And it's just like, let's just get it down to the basics again of the scary beast xenomorph. And in the original idea, the main character was actually Denver, that guy with the bird that shows up for a little bit and then gets killed, because I liked the idea of a coward teaming up with a predator, like and sort of like pitting them against each other and just trying to survive. And I worked up a few issues of that, and I just thought there's no core here. There's no, this guy doesn't really evolve as it goes along, and then I just thought, well, what's the least likely pairing? If we're expecting Marines, what's the least likely pairing that could team up with a predator? And it was a couple of kids. And so that's sort of where it started. And then I just got to work on, like, well, who are these kids? What is their dynamic? What is their conflict? And, how do they fit in? And then everything just grew from there. The cruise ship came out of that, and the parental relationship, and then Tyler being a replicant android came out of that. And
I think you're mixing your franchises there.
Yeah, I know. I just realized that. Well, I mean, if you squint, it wasn't there.
There are those. There are
Ridley
those
Scott, right?
Like to connect them, yeah.
Yeah, it's the android, right? So, that became the challenge of, like, okay, well, if we've got a couple of kids, what does that mean? How is that interesting, and how does that connect to the predator? And then, as we go along, I can get into more of the stuff that didn't make it into the story that sort of plays into that as well.
Sounds good. So just to go back up then, because we didn't get the. Well, I suppose no. You did talk about not being able to pick between a favorite, didn't you?
Oh man, yeah, I know. That's tough. It's really tough. I mean, Aliens is always going to have a place in my heart just for that experience I had when I was young. Is that what you're asking? What franchise is my favorite?
Well, which film is your favorite film?
Oh, yeah. I think as a kid it was Aliens, and I think as an adult it's Alien. It's got to be Alien. It's got to. It's just the, the horror movie in space, and Ripley is just such a great character. Like, she is just so the unlikely heroine against this monster. I think it's just, the dynamic is just so great.
Yeah, and it's her journey as well is interesting in itself, because it over the course of the films, it gives. The way she evolves gives different people different things to cling on to from her identity, to connect to her. The unlikely hero, the mother figure, parental figure. Yeah. And fighting against all odds kind of thing. When you've got so much on. So yeah, she's such a seminal character.
Yeah. And that moment I said before, like when she goes back for the cat, is such a human moment. It's just like. You get it. She's just a normal person up against this like unstoppable force, and I love it. I love characters like that.
And when it comes to the people involved in the comics or novels, another question we always love to ask is how familiar they were with the expanded universe before they got to play in it themselves. As a former editor at Dark Horse, I'm going to assume that you had some familiarity with the comics before writing Thicker Than Blood.
Yeah, I have a working knowledge of it. I wasn't too deep into it. Obviously whatever books I worked on when I was there. I really like I would dip in and out of the franchises if there was a creative team that I really liked. Like I liked Dust to Dust. I thought that was phenomenal. Like Gabriel Hardman is amazing. I can't remember the name of it, but the James Stokoe miniseries that came out a while back.
Dead Orbit, that was a really good one as well.
That one was great. So when I got the assignment, I started to go back and read, and I realized like I don't want to get too influenced. I don't want to get too much stuff in my head, because then I started drifting more back toward the survival and marine stuff. So yeah, I would say probably I've got a working knowledge of it, but not encyclopedic, if that makes sense.
Any favorite from the ones that you've read?
Oh, I mean, it's always the most recent stuff, the Dust to Dust. I like Hunters a lot. I know Chris Warner, he's here in town too. His stuff in Hunters I thought is really great.
We both really enjoyed the Hunters series as well. It's a shame because we just read Hunters 3, and it definitely seems like they were setting it up for more than 3 still, rather than including it at the end of 3. So I'm like,
I don't think anybody knew the license was going away in 2019. I don't know, maybe they did, I didn't.
I mean, we had a suspicion personally, just because it makes sense with 20th Century Studios owned by Disney. So, but it is super bittersweet for us, because I mean, Dark Horse having it for almost 30 years. It's just, we loved a lot of the stories that they told, and to have such a massive shift with the change in publisher, it'll be really interesting to see what comes of that.
I have no knowledge of what they've got planned, but I saw the announcement for the first Alien series they're rolling out, Marvel. So stuff's in the works.
So what about Alien versus Predator as a concept then? It originated with Dark Horse, and it's very much, I think, more of a transmedia kind of thing. It makes more waves in games and comics, but of course it does have its films. So when did you sort of first come across the crossover as a concept?
Well, I mean, probably like everybody else. I remember when the comics came out, and I think that, I think the hook of Alien Predator in the beginning was just the novelty of it. You've got these two big franchises that are super popular, and you've got these two creations, the Xenomorph and the Yautja, that are just so different, but so compatible with each other. I can't remember how old I was when the first AvP series came out, but
well, it would have been 89, 90?
Yeah, something like that. So I was probably in my early teens. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm rambling. What was the question again?
Do you remember the first time you actually came across the concept?
Oh yeah. It had to have been the comics, I think, because
the original.
Yeah, I remember seeing those. I mean, I've been reading comics since I was 5 years old, so I remember seeing those and just thinking, like, what an amazing idea! This is great, And Chris Warner and Randy Stradley were just on it. They were just firing on all cylinders.
And even Norwood's covers for those as well. Some of the best.
Yeah, I agree. And then I saw the movies when they came out, and I kind of felt like they didn't quite live up to the potential of the concept. Again, I think it just became like it's just monsters fighting. It's King Kong versus Godzilla kind of thing. They didn't really get into the mythology of it, that in a way that I thought could have been really awesome.
Well, you're not alone in that one.
Yeah. So hopefully someday, I mean, we'll see.
So what about how you got involved with Thicker Than Blood then? Was it a pitch that you had, or a Dark Horse reached out to you because of your past work with them?
Yeah, it was a Dark Horse reached out to me. They asked if I'd be interested. They said, I think it was, they had they planned their publishing schedules out pretty far in advance, and they had an AvP slot open, and Randy Stradley asked if I would be interested in pitching for it. And so we went out to dinner and just kind of threw some ideas around. And that's where the idea of like a coward on a derelict ship, sort of trying to survive the two species, came up. I mean, it's something that I've always wanted to do, but I never really made a push for it, I guess, because I just felt like the stuff that they were doing was so good and is so sort of outside my wheelhouse. Like, I'm not really into military fiction. I don't feel like I'm good at it, which is, I think, why we ended up with what we ended up with, is because I'm like, okay, well, what can I lean into that I can do? But yeah, it was just Randy asking me if I was available and interested, and I said, yeah.
Do you think was that something that Randy might have considered when he asked you to do it?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. I mean, I've worked with Randy for years, so he knows sort of what I'm all about, and I think that the nice thing about being in town too is that you can meet up, or you could before the pandemic. You know, go to dinner and grab a beer every couple of weeks and just say, "Hey, what do you think of this?" and bounce some ideas around. And he knows where I live if I blow a deadline, so that that helps too.
So did you get reasonably far with the coward ideas? Did you say you actually scripted a couple of issues?
I probably wrote a full 4-issue outline with him.
Okay.
So it was probably like a full page per issue. And it was just a lot of cat and mouse running around. There was a little more like comedy aspect to it. I imagined if Sam Rockwell was in an Alien movie, you know, it was a character like that I thought would be really fun.
Not the Moon Sam Rockwell.
No, the like 7 Psychopaths Sam Rockwell, or the Galaxy Quest Sam Rockwell, you know,
crewman number 5.
Yeah, guy.
I die in the first act.
Yeah. But like I said, I got to the end of the issues and I'm like, there's no reason for this to exist. You know, it's not really adding anything to either franchise. And this guy survives, but he doesn't really. He's braver at the end. I don't know. It just didn't. It felt hollow to me, and so I went back and just. I'm sure to Randy's frustration, I said, I'm throwing this all out and starting over. And it's like, okay. And I was just on a walk one day and I was thinking about the silhouette of a predator and 2 kids together. Because I remember like back in the 80s, again, like when they were doing the Transformers comics, the way that they sort of teased that, it was the silhouettes of all of the Autobots, you know, like side by side. And it was really intriguing. And so I thought, a predator with a kid on each side of him, like, what is that? Like, what that to me is sort of like, makes me want to know more. And then everything just sort of blew. I ran back home and I typed up an email to Randy and I'm like, what do you think about this? She's 15 and he's 8 and he's like, okay, just do it. Just give me something that I can send to Fox.
We've got deadlines to meet.
Yeah, come on.
I really love that dynamic. With the hobbling predator in the second half and how it was just being guided around by these kids and even the sibling dynamic, the fact that the younger one was an android kind of reminded me of a recent story that Aaron and I also liked, which was a novel, Alien Echo, which was marketed as like the first Alien novel geared towards young adults.
Oh, interesting. I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, and it was a little late to say spoilers because the character is unaware though that their sibling is an android.
Oh, okay.
In the book, and then they discover that.
Yeah.
But it was a really well done dynamic in that one too, and they go like in that story Echo, not to get too into it, but because I won't spoil it for you.
Okay,
definitely recommend it. Hopefully I didn't spoil it too much there.
No,
but
that sounds great.
Kind of remind me of what you went for with the sibling dynamic here a little bit.
Yeah, I think it was an original idea that you find out Tyler is an android as it goes along, but once I started really thinking about who he was and what his purpose was, it didn't really make sense to hide that from the rest of the family.
Well, that's become a bit of a trope anyway. So to have him established, who he was within, what was it, the second page, the third page, you'd already laid it out.
Yeah.
Is another one of those fresh sort of aspects of this book where it's like, okay, you're not going to ring me and surprise me later with an android head.
Yeah.
Let's crack on. Let's see what you're going to do different with him.
There's no room to do anything else really either. Like I always have these grand ideas when I start out, and then when I get to page 30, I'm like, I don't have any room to do any of this other stuff. So I got to go back and do that.
That's something else that Adam and I were talking about the other week. I think is it tends to be 4-issue runs. Occasionally you get a 5-issue run, and I think it's a question I have later in terms of adapting Predator. Oh, by the way, Jeremy was also writing the Predator original screenplay for Dark Horse as well.
Yeah.
So we'll ask him about that later.
Yeah. Thanks, COVID.
COVID / Marvel, I guess.
Yeah.
So in terms of them. We'll say in terms of Thicker Than Blood being 4-issue run, how difficult do you find that as a writer to construct that story?
It's tough. I mean, like I said, I have all these, like I had written a full backstory for the family and the ship and the predators. And I had all these ideas about, I knew that I wanted the elder predator to get crippled because I really like the idea of two kids and a hobbled predator against this really badass xenomorph. I just thought that was great. But originally the idea was that they used Tyler as bait to lead him into an airlock. And then they blast Tyler out into space, and as the airlock closes, he sticks his arm and his leg into the doors, and so it was a failed plan. But when I started really mapping it out, I'm like, that's 5 pages right there. That's it's a quarter of an issue. I don't have time for that. So it's at least for me, when I start out, I have all these ideas, and then it just becomes a game of subtraction. Like, okay, well, what is the essence of the story, and what's the core, and what needs to happen? And then you just sort of figure out, like, okay, well, how many pages do I need? How many pages do I need to show the xenomorph killing the second predator with the whip? Because it as a fan, I'm like, I want to see more of that. I want to see more of that fight, But it's when you want to do the character stuff, you've got to make room for it. And so the action is kind of what takes the hit there. But when I write a script, I sit down and I map it out. I figure, like, this is what happens on page 1. Well, I'll take my scenes first. I've got 5 major pieces of this issue. And I've got 20 pages to do it. So, scene 1, I can probably do in 1 or 2 pages. Scene 2 is going to need 5. And I just do the math until I've filled it all out. And I also think a lot about page turn reveals, where you hide something, and then when you turn the page, it gets right in the reader's face. And those are always on an even numbered page. And so, you've got to really think about, oh, I've got this great moment, but I got to make sure it happens on page 8 and not page 7. Because if somebody's reading it, if it's on page 7, they're going to open the book and they're going to see it immediately. And so you've lost your surprise. So it's mathematic, I guess, in a way, that figuring this stuff out. But yeah, it becomes a game of just like, okay, well, what can I lose and still keep the essence of the story and what's important.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't really ever thought about the notion of writing for your turns or your spreads and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So there's challenges in it as a whole other format rather than just, your panels and stuff. That's interesting.
Yeah, this is what I say when I talk to people about writing comics. It's like with movies, you're dealing with time. You've got 2 hours to do whatever you want to do, depending on your budget. You can go anywhere. All you've got to worry about is just, hitting your mark and sticking your landing at the end of that 2 hours. With prose, it's words, it's page count. With comics, it's physical space, it's real estate. You can only fit so many panels on a page and so much information in a panel. Typically you can do about 5 panels a page. So you're looking at about 80 to 100 panels an issue, right? Is that how that math works out? 20 times 5? No, not even that. So it's about 100, 80 to 100. So you've really got to be judicious in the choices you make. In terms of the images that you show. And then again, you think about the flow of the storytelling and the rhythm, and you don't want it to be just pedal to the metal, start to finish, because then it's, even that's just a flat dramatic line. You want it to kind of have ebbs and flows. And, the scene where they're in issue 3, where they're pushing the predator into the water, trying to kill him, that's high tension. And then they go back to the bar and you have that moment with Tyler and Maria where they sort of reconcile. And it's like, those are 2 really different rhythms of scenes. And so you've got to really be conscious about like how much space you're going to give that. And again, with the surprises, you don't want to show the predator walking up on them on an odd numbered page, because you're going to give it away. You want them to hear the sound and then turn, and then the reader turns the page and, oh shit, there he is.
So I'm a little curious. What's the deal with the odd and even numbered page? Like, are readers more likely to turn to?
So if you look at, you've got your trade paperback there of Thicker Than Blood, right? Your collection of Thicker Than Blood. So if you open it up, you open up the cover, and that first page would be page 1. Yeah. Right. So you turn the page, and that next page is page 2, and then that next page is page 3. So every odd numbered page, 3, 5, 7, they're always going to be on the right side. So every time you turn the page, the information that's on the right side is what your eye is naturally drawn to.
You're more likely to see the pages on the right than the ones on the left.
Yeah, because Western reading, we read left to right, and our eyes just naturally go that direction. And so you try to save. you try not to spoil any big information on the right-hand page because
Gotcha.
It's,
I get you now.
It's tricky because sometimes I'll sit down and I'll map out and I've got 5 surprises that I want to do in this issue, and you just can't do it, because then you've got to shortchange another scene, or then you've got to pick, okay, well, what's the important reveal? They're called reveals. What's the important reveal here that is worth sort of sacrificing something else to get to?
And when you and the rest of the creative team started on this, were you aware that it would be Dark Horse's last AvP title?
No. I mean, we started this at the end of 2018.
Oh.
So yeah, I finished it in 2019. So I don't know if Dark Horse knew, but we had no idea. I really thought this was going to be out in 2019, and I found out probably when everybody else did, like early part of this year, that Dark Horse was losing the license and Marvel was taking it over. And again, like I said, I did Dark Horse's last Star Wars one, and I'm like, oh, great, I'm cursed. Don't hire me if you want to keep the license.
Did Randy say anything about that?
I think I said it to him immediately. I think that he was just like, yeah, so we'll see what's next.
That's fair.
And one of the reasons we really enjoyed Thicker Than Blood so much was because of how, like we've been discussing, how unlike other Alien and Predator comics it was. And so we wanted to go a little deeper into some of those creative decisions. Straight from the go, it's not typical that this isn't a hunt for the predators. It's more of a straight up conflict, and that meant different behavior for them. I was talking to Aaron about this. I was like, oh, weird that they're just going on the ship and just killing everybody. But Aaron pointed out, like, well, that they were in the wrong territory, as the father character later describes in the comic. So why did you go down that road?
Well, I mean, for mechanical reasons, I had to have a reason to get them on the ship and the kids alone against them. So the idea was that this never comes out in the story, but those 3 predators are related. The elder predator is the father of the other 2. And they're not the top brass, I would say. The idea was that they're not bad bloods, but they're kind of screw ups. These 2 younger predators are kind of problem children, I guess. And so they were heading out on their first hunt, which is why they have the xenomorph, like dad's taking them out.
Okay.
And the elder had this whole idea of like, well, he was disgraced for some reason. He's been kind of demoted, and he's out training his sons to hunt. And so they've got this xenomorph, and they're on their way out to the planet, and they catch this yacht, this luxury ship in their territory. So they just hit it. And the characters, the names can never come out, but the elder predator in the script is named Hook. And then the one with the whip was Splitter, and the flamethrower predator is Pig Iron. And so if you notice that Splitter, the one with the whip, is the one who goes crazy. Like, he's the one who goes to the beach and just starts slaughtering everybody.
Yeah.
And Pig Iron stays back just to torment the alien because he's a jerk. He's not worried about, he doesn't see anybody on the ship as a threat or even worthwhile. He just wants dad and brother out of there. And he's like, okay, now I can start really like messing with this thing because I can't wait to get it. And I talked to Randy about that. Like, I don't want to contradict the power structure or the hierarchy of the predators, in this. I wanted to make sure that it still kind of fit within the behavior, because you're right, it's not typical of the way that they act or behave, or the rules of a situation like this. And part of the thinking of that too was that when the elder Hook sees Maria and Tyler, when that moment on the beach where they're drowning him, he recognizes something in them that he doesn't even see in his own kids, which is this like honor and bravery that they're willing to, the fact that they're willing to like drag him away and try to make a deal with him, I think really goes a long way with his opinion of them, even though he tries to kill them at one point. He breaks their stick and he tries to attack them. I really tried to think about like the family dynamics of all of the characters in this and how I can really play into that. And that was one of those things that like had to go when I realized I only had 80 pages.
Well, going back to the conceptual phase of that then, how were you planning to sort of convey that stuff? Because, traditionally, going back to Randy, for example, he conveys what the predators are doing through narration from the human characters and putting it into context that way. How would you have done it with this one? Had you got the page space?
I don't know. I really don't know. I think it would have had to, maybe it would have been when Tyler interfaces with their ship and he gets some information about them. He figures out like, okay, this is where they were headed. They're going off to this planet to release this thing. I really tried to keep in mind, like, what do these characters know? Like there would be, if you did a narration thing, it would have to be after the fact, and it would kind of give away that if it's Maria telling the story, if Maria's telling a story a year later, that she's going to make it. So I think that was one of the things that went early on. I'm like, okay, this is a complicated idea. I don't know how I'm going to convey it. And they, obviously I don't want to do like translated dialogue with the predators, like, I'm so disappointed in you kids.
You're a disgrace to the family.
Yeah.
No, but that is certainly an interesting dynamic, because that would have been completely different as well.
Yeah.
Completely untouched kind of territory for what.
Yeah, and I sort of saw the whole thing as kind of a redemption arc for the Elder too. Like he kind of regains his honor a little bit in like helping these kids and killing this xenomorph throughout. He loses his own family in it, but I like to think that like at the start of the story, he's kind of this broken older predator that his life hasn't gone the way that he has wanted it to go, and at the end of it he's like, I still have honor, I still I can leave with my head kind of held high.
And I gotta say, I do love the call it good line.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Well, and too, like, he calls it good and then he's out of there. Like that came up in the writing. Like, he calls it good and then he sucks the ramp up and the kids are just like almost sucked out into space.
Yeah.
He's like, all right, we're done. I don't care what happens to you after this.
I thought that was good.
So when it came to characters, one of the elements that we were particularly fascinated with was Tyler. He's introduced as someone who will never grow up, a perpetual child trapped in an immortal body. But as the stories progress, we learn he's not so immortal. He's failing, and his owners, his parents, are just going to be rid of him. Can you tell us a little bit about that character arc?
Yeah, I really am happy with how that came out. And again, I had this whole backstory with the family written out that let me see how far back to go. So mom and dad were getting a divorce. Like this,
you could feel that tension.
Yeah. So what had happened is, before Maria was born, they had another son who died in an accident that was kind of their fault. And so they bought Tyler to replace him. Like, he's supposed to be this companion, sort of AI-ish, like, you can have a little boy in your family. And it didn't work. Like, it didn't save their marriage. It didn't help. So they decided to, they made the classic mistake of like, well, we'll have a child together, another child, and that'll save our marriage. And it didn't. It was Maria. So Tyler, in a way, is her older brother. Like, he was there to raise her. He's basically just a companion. That's his function, is to just be a playmate. And so he raised her from infancy. And mom and dad just see him as another piece of the ship. Like, mom especially started giving him, when Maria outgrows him, starts giving him other jobs that he's not really built for. He's not really built to inventory the ship and run all these systems, but he's another piece of machinery on the ship that she can put to use. And so that's where I wanted a lot of the tension from Maria to come from, is she knows her parents are, it's a broken marriage and they're neglectful, and she, in her mind, she thinks they like Tyler more because he's perfect. Like, she doesn't know all this stuff that's going on with him, that he's outdated and he's I just really like the idea.
Literally thought himself to death as well, hasn't he? I think you mentioned
absolutely.
that.
Yeah, I had it early on. Another thing that didn't make it is that I really wanted Tyler to feel obligated to rescue all the cartography data that their father had collected in this space. Like, dad died for this information. We should, if we're going to survive, this is how we're going to help dad survive, is if we go get all his map data. And so I had imagined a scene where they go back to the bridge and he starts uploading the data and he says, okay, well, this is going to wipe out my personality because I don't have enough space for everything. And that was going to be the moment where she's like, whoa, wait, like, what do you mean? And then he would say, like, well, I'm failing, like, my cognitive functions are failing. I don't have enough memory left. If we're going to save dad's data, it's going to wipe me out. But yeah, I really like the idea of a character that has kind of outlived his purpose and his usefulness, but is still trying, is still like looking for a new reason to exist. And he loves Maria. And, depending on how optimistic or cynical you are, he eventually will become her son, or her grandson. You know, he's not going to age, but she will grow up and have her own family, and he'll be the playmate to her children or grandchildren. Or the other direction is she'll just never be able to fix him and he's toast. You know, depending on how you want to read that. But yeah, I just like, once that dynamic kind of came into my head, I just thought like, it's going to make his last stand against the xenomorph that much more poignant, you know, where he's fulfilling his destiny in that moment. Like, I'm built to protect you and I'm going to do it. Yeah, I just love characters that just are just outside of their depth and they just keep trying, even though they know it's the odds are impossible.
It was surprising for me when the point comes up in the story that the mother was going to sell him off, because the moment right before the mother character gets killed where she's like, I love you both.
Yeah.
And she seemed hesitant to kind of send him out there while the whole family escaped. So I was wondering, like, oh, was she having like second thoughts about that? Or
yeah, I think so. I think also there's this dynamic sometimes with parents where they kind of know they're bad parents, you know, and they I mean, this is not a generalization, but I think sometimes in like broken relationships, I think in that moment, mom was like, I kind of have to make up for some bad behavior. You know, they've been neglectful of Maria, and, you know, and Maria is her daughter. So there is, you know, she does love her. But yeah, I think, you know, and maybe the idea evolved as it went along. The downside with comics too is that you're publishing the material as you're writing it. So issue 1 was done when I was writing issue 3. And had I to do it over again, I probably would have gone back and altered that scene a little bit. You know, having seen how the scene with the reconciliation between Maria and Tyler plays out. Gone back and maybe tweaked the last stand with mom a little bit, but sort of the nature of comics.
Yeah, it was an interesting plot point that this was like a family-run business, this space yacht, and that kind of made me curious, like, well, how did this family get the resources to acquire this yacht? How long have they been running this business? Like, it just made me curious about the whole history of this thing. Yeah,
well, it's mom's ship. Mom's the captain of the ship. And another thing, they weren't just getting divorced, but they were going to sell the ship at the end of this was going to be their last voyage.
Oh, I see.
And then she was going to go off and work for a tour company or something. But yeah, I just imagine she probably was a tour guide like earlier in life and was just doing really well and probably started her own tour company. And then that just expanded from there to where she was able to buy her own ship. And, you know, and then he's a cartographer. So it makes sense that he'd want to go out with her and map new areas and planets.
Do you typically sort of come up with that in-depth of backstory while you're working on your comics? Because, I mean, while reading this, you could feel the sort of, you know, the history there. You know, even if you'd conceived it and couldn't fit it in, you could feel it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
that's not a sensation you always get when reading things. So is that typical of your process?
Yeah, I think I do a lot. I call it sort of working outside the frame, like what's happening outside the story that people aren't going to see, but it's still going to inform how the characters behave. A lot of my process is just asking myself questions. You know, like, who are these kids? Well, okay, one of them's an android. Like, well, why? Why is he an android? Why would he be an android on the ship? Why would the parents need that? And it's just answering those questions as you go. And then once you sort of have that bigger picture, that informs like, well, how would these characters behave in this situation? You're like knowing that history, knowing that the predator is the father, the elder's the father to these other two, or that mom is going to sell Tyler, you know, that informs how they interact with each other and how they interact with the situation. And then that makes it better for me as a writer, because then when I start to figure out how things are going to go, I know how they're going to react. I know the dialogue that you know, I know what they're going to say to each other. So it's an enormous amount of work, but I think that it makes the story better for me. Like I enjoy that kind of like depth to it, because otherwise it just becomes plot points. You know, it just becomes characters going from A to B and sort of verbalizing to each other what they're doing and why they're doing it. And as a reader, I just don't. That's just kind of boring to me.
Well, when the world building of these kind of things is one of the things that, you know, really appeals. You know, particular stories, the ones with good world building, whether it be lore of the universe or just, you know, what's motivating and informing what's happening on the page. Those ones where you can sense that are the ones that I think are most satisfying.
Yeah, and they resonate. Like all of that stuff for me, like, you know, being a 15-year-old that's kind of angry at your parents, and you know it's a universal thing. That's something that I really try to do, is like just find some emotional honesty in these stories that can connect with people as readers, that they can recognize a little of themselves, or maybe even just I always look at my writing and my storytelling as trying to work out my own emotional problems in a way, or like helping other people work out there. Yeah. Or maybe I've worked something out and I can convey it in a way that'll help somebody else. And so that's sort of my starting point always.
But even the notion of Tyler as this immortal, never growing up kind of thing is resonant. Because I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I'm still 18 in my head. And I'm never going to grow up from that. So that's a very familiar sensation as well.
Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely. Because I have that feeling, and I also wanted to show the downside of that. You know, that it's like Tyler is immortal, but there are drawbacks to that. You know, he does have limitations, and it's not the fantasy you think that it is when you finally get it. But yeah, I mean, I look in the mirror and I'm like, what happened? You're not 18. This is, I have that same feeling.
So one of the things you've already spoke about is this mental image of a predator with the two kids next to him. So, you know, the team up between predators and human characters is one of those staples of the concept. It just is. And Thicker Than Blood, you know, you did it with this very different style with the kids. So why was that mental image the one you zoned in on? Why that road?
Well, I think it just made me want to know more. Like, it just made me want to know, what is this about? Like, again, because you know, you hear AvP and the immediate expectation is Marines and armies of xenomorphs and predators, and I just really wanted to do something that when people, I was really hoping the kids would make it on the covers, because I really wanted, when people saw it, to be like, what is this? Why this is different than anything I've ever seen. And then again, like I said, I'm just not good at writing military stuff. So it was like, okay, well, what can I do? But yeah, it was really just that I like the idea of throwing an image out there that made me or a reader go, I don't know what this is, but I want to know what it is. I want to know more about this. I want to know why. I want to know why the predator's with these two kids. I want to know who these two kids are. Yeah, I think that was just it. And then from there, it just became asking a lot of questions. Who are they? What are they about? You know, why are they on the ship? Why is this predator teaming up with them? That seems crazy.
Okay, understood.
Just to touch on the covers, I really love the covers that Chun Lo did for this. Were there any ever plans for variant covers for?
Not that I know of. I don't know. Randy had shown me the cover designs, and I was like, oh, this is great. What about the kids, though? I kept saying, I'm like, what about the kids? And wisely, he was very wise. He's like, that's not going to sell this book. Like, afterward,
Tyler still makes it onto the trade cover. Anyway.
Yeah, and man,
you can't really tell he's a kid in that particular artwork though. So
I think I mean, they made the right call on that one.
When Tyler and Maria are aboard the Predator ship and he's trying to interface with it, Tyler mentions something else being in there. I was wondering if there was more to that statement than just the ship's countermeasures.
Yeah, I think the idea was just that there was something in there that it was just countermeasures. It was just something that would attack any sort of hacking or anything that wasn't a predator trying to control the ship would, you know, give it feedback. Or there was a moment where I really wanted Tyler to kind of talk to the ship, you know, and I think again that would have got into more of the backstory with the predators. But by the time I got to that scene, I'm like, there's just no space for anything. Like, I need to find a way for them to release the xenomorph. And so this is how they're going to do it. Like, he's going to get shocked by this thing, and he's just going to unlock everything, because they're trying to unlock the ship. You know, that was the whole purpose there, is like to release their ship. Just countermeasures, basically, just a reason for him to panic and start letting things go, opening doors and dropping chains.
And all these extra plot elements you're mentioning makes me wish it was a 5-issue series.
Me too.
Like, for me, like, I feel like that's the perfect length. Sometimes the stories like Defiance that go more like longer format than that. How many issues was that, Aaron? Was that like 10, 12?
12, I think.
Those can kind of drag on for us a little bit. But no, I think this could have used one more issue, especially with everything you're telling us here.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious for a novel, to be honest.
Oh yeah.
Do you want to do some prose, Jeremy?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We can set you up with the editor at Titan.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I write short stories and stuff on my own, but haven't actually dove into a novel yet.
Well, if you're wondering, if you want to make a start,
all right, I like it.
Thicker Than Blood.
Yeah.
So, well, to go back to comics as a visual medium here, in terms of the visual story, Thicker Than Blood has a visual team. Sorry, Thicker Than Blood has some stellar credits. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Doug Wheatley on lines, Rain Burrito on colors.
Yeah.
We couldn't have asked for a better team for Dark Horse's AvP comics.
I know. I agree. I again, I just feel so lucky and so fortunate. Yeah, I came up with the idea, and I had some artists. And I don't know, maybe it's this sort of like false humility in myself, but I was like, well, I just hope they get somebody good, you know. And when when Randy said Doug Wheatley, I was like, no way. There's no way. Doug's going to be busy. There's no way this is going to work out. And yeah, when those two, Rain and Doug together, are just phenomenal. Did
you mostly know Doug from his Star Wars work then?
Yeah. He and Randy had worked on a lot of Star Wars together, and then they did a King Tiger, which is a kind of a superhero miniseries that Randy wrote together. Yeah, I've known Doug since 2003 or 4 when he was working on Star Wars, and I've always been just so amazed. He's just so talented, and then to team him up with Rain, who's also amazing. I was pinching myself. I even got to a point where like, oh man, now I got to live up to this. You know, like now I got to do something like really worthwhile, which was also good for me because I really wanted to push like the locations. I really wanted the locations to be interesting and different. And when I knew Doug was on board, I'm like, well, he can do anything. You know, I don't have to like work around him. And I just am so happy and so lucky to have teamed up with them.
So I know it tends to vary from, you know, series to series. So in terms of your experience with Thicker Than Blood, how much, you know, collaboration was actually going off between you and those two? Did you personally have much input from the visual side?
Yeah. So Doug, Randy, and I are all friends. We email each other, you know, all throughout the week. And so I would send Doug, also in my scripts, I try to make my scripts really conversational with the artist, where I say, hey, I really try to show like, well, here's the emotional context, or here's the point of this scene. But if you're the visual thinker, Doug, so if you can come up with a better way to do this, if you want to add panels or take panels away or move things around, go for it, because I trust you. And so the way the process would work is I would send in a script, and then Randy would read it, and then they would send it to Fox, and Fox would approve it. And then they send it to Doug, and Doug would do thumbnails. He would do like breakdowns of the pages. So, you know, really simple drawings, which for Doug are still amazing. And he'd send them to me and Randy and I. And yeah, you would just go through and you would look, and sometimes you would see that I would see that maybe I didn't convey something very clearly in the script. I could notice it in Doug's thumbnails or his breakdowns. And I could say, oh, hey, Doug, I meant for the I meant for the predator to be in a different spot in the room over here, because on the next page they've got to do this other action. So it was really collaborative that way, and it was really nice. And Doug could email me whenever he wanted to if he had a question. The scene at the end in the arboretum with the flamethrower, Doug had some questions about the choreography of it. And so we would just go back and forth on like, okay, well, the tree that she gets slammed into should be back here because it's got to catch on fire. And that was really nice. I don't always get that luxury when I'm working on a licensed book. A lot of times the experience is I'll write a script and I'll send it in, and then I won't see anything until the comic comes out, which could be months and months later. And I'll flip through it. And, sometimes I'll work with artists for whom English is not their first language. And so the scripts get translated for them. And so you see like things get lost. Yeah, I mean, sometimes it comes back better, but sometimes you see things just got lost in translation. And so it's like, okay, well, this isn't quite, I don't mean this to crap on anybody, because I think everybody's really talented, but you'll see like some context gets lost, or like when you're trying to set up a moment that's going to pay off later, that will get lost in the translation. So it was super nice.
Some of the complexity of the English.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and even in the writing of the script, I have to be really careful with the language that I use, because I don't want them to be confused about, when you describe a character wearing a ball cap, like we understand what that is, but somebody in Brazil might not. understand that lingo, like a ball cap. What is that? Like, do they have a ball with a lid on it? Like, I don't know. So you have to be careful of that as well. But after that, I got to see Doug's pages, but I didn't get to see Rain's colors after issue 2 until the book came out. So that was a surprise for me too. I finally got a copy of the book and I saw the last half of it. I was like, oh man, this is giving me chills. It's so good. But there's not a lot. I'm not a colorist. I don't really know color theory. So there's not a lot of input I could have done anyway on that I think would have made any difference. Those guys are so talented. I just trust what they're doing.
So talking about like some of your writing mentality, I guess. I mean, I understand this is a completely different visual medium than say films, but I mean, when I think about comics, I do sort of put it in film terms.
It's visual.
Yeah. Do you ever, while you're writing, have to sort of fight the idea of treating yourself like a director of a film, or does that sort of inform what you're doing?
I used to. Yeah, I used to. I think that comes from not trusting myself or the artists or the readership. I used to early on when I was writing comics, I would give camera direction. I totally would. I would, like low angle, looking up with the light coming in from this side. And I just found that really frustrated the artists, and it actually hurt the story because, the artist is going to look at it and they're going to go like, well, the blocking here doesn't make any sense because you're not thinking visually about the space. You're just thinking about the image in the panel. The only time that it really comes up is if there is a specific, there's the moment in the Arboretum where Maria everything's on fire and she's against the tree and the sprinklers come on. And I really wanted those pages to mirror each other because she passes out when the predator is standing over her and the sprinklers are on. And then she wakes up again when he's brought her and Tyler to the lifeboat. And those layouts are identical. Like, I really liked the idea of like the repetition of those images. So there are things I'll call out for that. Or if the anime that Tyler liked to watch, like we get that image repeats 3 times. Like you see it on page 1, and then you see it again when Tyler has his last stand against the xenomorph. It's exactly the same staging. And then you see it in Tyler's dream on the last page. Like I like the idea of the repetition of that. And then the other thing mechanically is if you've got 2 characters in a panel talking to each other, you need to make sure that the character who speaks first is on the left because their balloon has to come before the character who responds. So that's something I always have to keep in mind, like when I'm having a conversational scene of like, okay, who's on the left, who's on the right? And I will often remind the artist like, okay, Maria has the first line of dialogue, so make sure she's standing to the left of Tyler in this. But otherwise, I've just found that like just let the artists figure out the angles and the camera and the lighting because they're so much better at it than I am. Again, I feel like my job is to convey the emotion of it and convey the sort of what's supposed to be happening and what's happening internally with the characters. But I'm pretty hands off when it comes to staging and directing because they're just so good. They're just so much better at it than I am. And I'm always excited. I get it back and I'm like, oh, this is so much better. This is so much better than what I thought it was going to be.
And just touching back on what you said about the ship's environments, I thought that was another real strong suit of this this series was just the varying locations in the ship. You had the beach, you had this like park atrium, you had this bar and lounge. Like there were so many distinct locations in the ship that made it really just visually interesting.
Yeah, thanks. That was something else too that I always think about because it is a visual medium, and I think about what's going to be visually interesting, obviously, but also like what is the artist going to have fun drawing? Like I don't want them to be spending 80 pages just drawing darkness, or just drawing characters just talking against
that's when you get the lazy coloring background.
Yeah. And so I knew Doug was amazing and I just thought, okay, I'm going to give him. Yeah, I really like the idea of and again, it also like creates that question in the reader of like, what is it? Why are we on a beach? Like, what is this? Why is the sky suddenly digitized? And the hard part with that is I really had to keep track of sort of the layout of the ship. I had to keep in mind like, okay, well, the beach is on the bottom deck and then the lounge is above that. and then the atrium is in the front, and then Dad's lab, because Dad is like selfish, he put his lab on the most beautiful section of the ship, so that he can work on his experiments when he's got a view out the front of the ship, and then he can go overlook this beautiful park. And also that was part choreography too. Like, how do I get the xenomorph out of the lab and into the park? Okay, well, they've got to be connected. And sometimes when I would send a script in, Doug would be like, okay, well, how do they get to the lounge, from the lounge to the lifeboat? And I would have to go back and think like, okay, is that up or down? Like, which way is this elevator going? So I thank you for that. I appreciate that worked out. Because again, that was another thing that I'm like, man, people are going to really like this, or they're going to roast me.
Unfortunately, the situation with COVID and the printer shutting down meant not all of the Thicker Than Blood was released as single issues. And instead, we were waiting for the release of the trade. I'm guessing the answer is going to be yes here. But did the pandemic impact your work on the series in any other way?
Well, not mine. I mean, I had written it. I had finished it back in 2019. So the story was all done before the pandemic. And I don't know if which issue Doug was drawing at the beginning of the year or the end of 2019. Might have been issue 4. Anyway, yeah. So I think it hit Doug a lot harder than it hit me. I think that nobody really knew what was going on with the printers and the schedules. And then they're running up against this hard deadline, apparently, of Marvel taking it over in January of 2021. So it's like
31st of December.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, we've got to get this thing out. And so there was, I remember it was in April when Randy told me about the Predator, the screenplay, the original screenplay project getting taken off. And he said, I don't know if we're going to be able to finish Thicker Than Blood. And I was just heartbroken because I'm like, this is so good. I want people to see Doug's work. And so it's bittersweet because it's like, okay, it's out. We made it. We made it like right under the wire, but it's going to go out of print like immediately. Like comes out in December 2nd or whatever, and it's December 31st. They can't publish it anymore. So it's get it while you can.
Well, Marvel is already on it with the reprints of the older stuff from Dark Horse. I'm sure they'll get around to the newer stuff.
Yeah. I mean, again, that happened to me with Star Wars. I did the Darth Maul thing, and it came out at the end of the year, and then I don't think they reprinted it for like 5 years after that. So it was a little bit of a wait. But yeah, I mean, I'm happy it's out. Like it's given the choice, but that was rough, especially with issue 2 coming out and like knowing what was coming. And I would go online and read reactions, and again, everybody's like, "Oh, I hate Maria. She's so terrible." And, I don't know where the story's going, and I'm like, "Oh, if only you could see." Hopefully you'll get to see where it goes.
The reactions on our forum, I've just noticed a few of the first people who have said they've read it. They've been pretty positive.
Good.
Like one of our forum members, Russ840, said, I have to say, other than the original AvP and possibly Eternal, this has got to be the best AvP comic.
Oh, man. Wow. Yeah, that's flattering.
I probably agree with that.
I would agree with it. I would agree
with
it.
Thanks.
Top 3 easily.
Ah, man. Shucks. Thanks, guys.
It was pretty strange, kind of touching back on the single issue thing, though, that Dark Horse continued on with Alien, the original screenplay, in single issues rather than paperback. It's like you couldn't finish the 2 single issues for this, but you're doing a full 4 single issues.
Yeah, I don't know what maybe they just had that one more in the can. Like maybe they had more issues done.
I think it was a business thing. So when they adapted William Gibson's comic, that was the best-selling Alien title that Dark Horse had for a long time.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, it was one of the things I did during the lockdown. I was like, I've always wondered how well these actually sell, and went through all the.
I didn't know they published
the sales charts.
Yeah, you can find them. Yeah.
So I think they were just trying to hopefully replicate that same financial success because it was the same kind of thing, basically.
Yeah, that was a priority. It sounds like just get that one out, and they maybe had a longer lead time, so there were more issues ready to go.
So
they would have done Predator as well. Then I mean,
I know. Oh man, that would have. We'll get
archives type thing. Yeah,
we'll get to that Predator thing. That would have been so good.
So in terms of Thicker Than Blood, Jeremy, when it all said and done, the book's out, it's in our hands. You've seen it come together. Hands are washed. There's nothing else you can do. What was the most satisfying aspect of this job for you, of this run?
I think, man, I mean, working with Doug was like seeing Doug execute the story so well was really satisfying. Like every time I start a story, I always have a target that I want to hit. And in this case, I really wanted the relationship between the kids to like resonate. And I feel like with Doug, with Doug's help, that really landed really well. And that's really rewarding to me. And also just having a book at the end of it that I can hold and, give my family and show my friends and like, yeah, this exists. We did it. We pulled it off. And again, it's like a dream working on these franchises. Like I can't even tell you how excited 11-year-old me, annoying the hell out of everybody with their aliens plot, like to go back and say like, you're going to contribute to this, you're going to become a part of this. Like I have to step back and be like, man, I can't believe it. I can't believe that like I get to do this. So I just think from start to finish, it's been the delays in the publishing were a bummer, obviously, but yeah, and this is hopefully a story that's going to stand up. That like you guys said, it's like nothing else. So a few years from now, if I ever am having a conversation with somebody and I say, oh yeah, I wrote some AvP, and they say which one, and I'm like, oh, the one on the ship with the kids, they'll know exactly which one it is. They'll know. I don't have to say, oh, it's the third one with the Marines that not to knock that stuff because I love it, but
well, yeah, I mean, it's kind of what we clamor for in terms of the theatrical thing. It's like, okay, give us our Colonial Marines fucking shit up with the aliens and predators.
Yeah.
Then go do your other stuff, please.
Yeah, absolutely.
So on the reverse of that one, then, what was the most challenging part of working on Thicker Than Blood?
I think, again, just I'm pretty self-critical. Like working on anything, I'm just always like, oh, this is no good. Like you spend so much time with it, you start to lose sight of what it is. And so a lot of times I would send the script in. And because I had so much more story that I wanted to do, I always felt like everything was a compromise. And so I would send it in and I'd be like, oh, this is like 70% of what I wanted to do. I hope it's good. I hope it works out. And then again, just not being able to get to that stuff. Like you said, it would have been good to have that extra issue to kind of dig into more of the dynamics with the predators. And just being able to do more, I think would have been nicer. But, I'm happy with how it came out. I'm grateful that it's the way that it is. But yeah.
And AvP is a concept that people have always seemed to appreciate more when it comes to the comics or the games. Mm-hmm. As far as the movies go, do you feel that it's just better suited to those other outlets, or have the films just not had the chance to do it justice?
I just don't think they've done it justice. I think that, not getting into anybody's heads, but of the people making it, but it just seems like they look at it like an amusement park ride or something. It's like, oh, it's just two monsters that we can throw against each other and do just cool stuff. And there's not a lot of, I think if you really got into the hierarchy and the mythology of both franchises, you could do so much. You could really I don't know. I don't know why they think that they just go for like the most surface version of both of these properties, it seems like. And the human characters are never really that deep or well developed in it either. So there's not a lot to really latch onto. But I always feel like there's hope. Like whoever the next director is or the next writer, maybe they'll take it. And, a Darren Aronofsky AvP would be incredible. You know what I mean? Like it just really seems like you put it in the right hands and it's going to be spectacular.
Yeah. Well, hopefully. I mean, I didn't expect us to be getting another Predator movie so soon.
I know. Yeah.
Maybe they'll give AvP another shot. I would love to see that.
Yeah, me too. What do you think of the announcement of that new Predator movie coming out?
We're really excited for it. I mean, both Aaron and I have always wanted one set in the past.
Yeah.
And I think that would be a perfect opportunity to kind of do the same thing with Predator as you did with like Alien and Alien Isolation, like make the Predator scary again.
Yeah.
In this like ancient human history setting. It could be really cool.
Yeah. I'm with you. That sounds great.
I'm still waiting for that AvP anime though. I'm still hanging on for that.
Yeah. Do you know anything about that? Any status on when that's
just everything we had heard? It was that it was pretty much finished, but due to some licensing issue with Netflix and Disney fully acquiring studios, I mean, it has to come out somewhere.
Yeah, it's so frustrating.
You can't have this fully finished series.
Yeah, you're just
throw it in
on
the dumpster. Like what?
Yeah, sitting on money there.
And that's something we've always wanted to see too. Was
the
anime.
Yeah, I've read about that. And it just sounds so great.
Well, AvP is the concept, and Predator, I think, suits the format in terms of the stylistic nature that they can be done. But yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
And now moving on to that Predator story, as well as Thicker Than Blood, you were penning Dark Horse's first dip into bringing alternate versions of the Predator franchise into comic form with Predator, the original screenplay. And we understand that all issues had actually been written.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the questions that everyone is thinking now is, what are the chances that Marvel will actually publish this?
Man, I hope. I think Patrick Blaine, the artist, I think he was almost done with issue 3. So, I mean, there's material out there. It's 5 issues like the other ones. It's really up to Marvel. I have no idea like what their plans are, or I mean, obviously they're recollecting the Dark Horse stuff, but I mean, this, like you said, it was the Alien original screenplay, or the Alien 3 William Gibson was such a big seller. It seems like Marvel would be interested in picking something like that up. I sort of get the sense though that like when a new publisher takes over, they kind of want to do their own thing at first. Like they've probably got their own. They probably have an editor who's excited about the program and doesn't want to latch onto the past too much. I mean, I'm just guessing here, but nobody's been in contact with me about any of it, so I don't know.
Would they even need to be? Just
not really. I guess the scripts are done. I mean, if they would have to get in touch with Patrick, the artist, again, and have him just pick up where he left off.
It's a weird situation, Yeah. It's a strange one. So the huge appeal of seeing projects like the original screenplay is in how they differ from the finished film that we know and love. Now, whether that's little things like in this case, Dutch's. Although you never replied to me to tell me if this was the actual script.
I was saving it. So the script that you sent me is dated July 1985. The script that I was working on was dated September 84. Ooh. And it's called Hunters. It's plural. And it is Matheny. Yeah, Dutch is Matheny in it.
Okay.
I skimmed through this morning the link that you sent me, and the one that I was working on is actually quite a bit different.
Even more so than because that was still a fair bit different from the one that we have on the website. Still a fair bit different from the finished film. So you know what? This might now turn into a Jeremy. What do you remember about that script?
Well, I'll say this that I skimmed the link that you sent me, so I don't know what I'm saying might actually be in there. But in the version that I was working off of, they kind of imply that Matheny has PTSD and that he's maybe not fit to be leading this mission. Okay. And they imply that Anna, the character, is not in the version that I have at all. But Matheny has these flashbacks to this mission gone wrong in Beirut, where he was working with the I think the Israeli Defense Force. So I really dug into that. This idea of Matheny kind of being this broken man on this mission, and there was also this great subplot about this strained relationship that he had with his father. And I know. I don't know where all that stuff went. So there's a flashback in it where he's a boy, he's 12 or 13, and his father is taking him hunting, and he's wounded a deer. And his dad is making him, you've got to put it out of its misery. You've got to kill it. There was like depth and resonance to it that I just was like, oh man, people are going to lose their minds over this.
So in terms of you taking that and adapting it and reshaping it, what were some of your favorite differences from a narrative point of view? Was it that depth of character for?
It was all of those flashbacks. It was all of those. I went back and I asked them if I could expand on the flashbacks of him and his father and the mission in Beirut that went wrong, to kind of like play into this PTSD that he has. And so that's what I was excited about. The first issue actually opened with him and his dad on that hunting trip, to kind of bookend with the ending of it. And they were so great. They, I would send them these ideas of like, because I didn't want to add anything that wasn't there, but I wanted to kind of expand what was.
And when you say they, we're talking
like Fox. Yeah.
Okay. So you didn't communicate with the Thomas brothers or anything like that?
No, it was all through. I don't know if they have any ownership in the script at this point, but yeah, it was all through Dark Horse and Fox.
Okay. So with a lot of the two that we've seen, Alien and Alien 3, were relatively more straightforward adaptations of that script. Alien 3's thing was maybe an omission of a scene, an earlier death. Did you sort of juggle this one around a bit more in terms of strengthening the narrative core of the story?
Yeah, a little bit. I moved. I think in the draft that I read, you get the majority of the flashback information about Matheny when he's in the mud, after he's gone over the waterfall and he's covered in the clay, and he passes out and he has these fever dreams about his past. And so that's where you get a lot of the information. And I just asked if I could take those out and move them around in the story, again, like open with the father and tease the Beirut stuff a little bit more before you get to that point. I had 5 issues with this one, so there was a little more room to play. But in the case of situations like this, you have to decide what to cut because you don't have enough space to do a full 2-hour movie in it. And the first thing to go are just the action sequences. You just find a way to condense them down, because you could very easily have like a 15 or 20 page sequence of Matheny and the Predator sort of cat and mousing around. So you just have to decide how can I convey that in a small amount of space, and do we really have to show them going into 3 different caverns? Can that still happen in one cavern?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's, as a reader, you don't know what you're missing. You don't know what wasn't there, but you still get that sort of visceral feeling of, the action and the
intent. Yeah.
Yeah. And the intensity of it.
I think you kind of got into our next question there.
Yeah.
As you were describing, the pacing is just a really important thing to nail. I mean, you got a script with nearly 2 hours worth of pages, and you got to make that work as a 5-issue run, which is about 50 minutes worth of reading time. So I guess it's just condensing things where you can.
Yeah.
Especially in terms of the action
there's a lot of scenes in it where the soldiers are kind of just marching around, going from place to place. So you figure out can you combine 2 of those scenes, because they're going from point A to point B and they're having a conversation, or the scene with the scorpion where they stick the knife in the scorpion happens in one spot, but maybe if those characters are interacting in a different place, can you combine all of that? So you still get those moments, but they just happen together, if that makes sense, because then you can save yourself, okay, I just saved 5 pages there. I can devote to, them realizing that they've been set up. I can devote a little more space to that when they find the helicopter. And so, yeah, it's just decisions like that.
So from a visual point of view with this thing, with the original screenplay, is you're writing it, picturing it out in your head, what would have been, what were the more interesting sort of visual moments in your head while you were doing this? Is there any that stick out as, really striking because of their differences to the original? Or
yeah, well, I think the approach that I took to it is I made sure it was set in 1984, and I wanted it to feel like a 1984 movie. So that meant really great special effects, I don't know what they call it, not CGI, but the natural effects. And so
the practical effects.
The practical effects, yeah. So I really had fun with the kills, with the Predator's kills. Because in the early draft, the Predator just kind of has a javelin kind of thing that it uses to kill everybody. And I think in one scene, it's got, I don't know in the draft that you sent, but the Predator, it collects skins. It doesn't collect the skull and the spine. So when Matheny comes to the camp, he sees all his friends sort of stretched out on these drying racks. And so I asked can we get creative with these kills? Can we do these spring-loaded clockwork Saw kind of horror things that when each of these soldiers dies, it's just graphic and horrific? And they were like, yeah, go for it. So there's, I think I had a scene where one of the soldiers, I think it's Blaine, gets ambushed, and the hunter has got this hollow tube that he shoves into his head, and then his brain sprays out the top. And You know, just thinking about like
man.
how can he preserve the skin? He doesn't care about the skull or the spine. How can he kill these people in a way that preserves the skin, but it's still just graphic? There's a scene where I think it's Ramirez, something attaches to his rib cage and like splits it open while he's still alive. And so like, and Patrick Blaine, the artist, was perfect for this. He was setting these pages in, and I was just like, man, people are gonna lose their minds when they see this. This is gonna be so great. Someday, I hope.
Someday, hopefully.
Yeah.
So in terms of perhaps differences to the way the Predators portrayed it in this particular draft, is there any other than the trophy taking that stick out to you as being significantly different?
Well, he's reptilian, like in the earlier drafts, and he's more of a, I don't know in the draft that you had, but he doesn't really have a cloaking device. It's more of like chameleon-like skin where he can change shift the scales. And that alone is so different from what ended up in the movie. And the relationships between Matheny is so far from Dutch that, even just those two factors alone make it, just so interesting and different.
There was in terms of the one I've read, there was a lot of character differences. The background, the backstory with Dylan, it was Dixon in the one I've read.
Yes, that's the same here. Yeah,
that's completely different. And the dynamics way off as a result.
Yeah,
and you had these extra characters that existed just to die and name swaps and stuff like that. And that whole Anna's in the one I sent you, but she doesn't make it to the end. She just gets blitzed by the Predator as well. So just the little changes, even in terms of like character names and dynamics like that, I always forget how different the earlier stuff is to the finished thing.
Yeah, the Dixon character in particular, he's kind of, in the draft that I have, he's kind of a villain of the story. Like he's CIA, and he's there to sort of oversee the mission. And you're right. It's so different. It is so different. It's interesting. I love that too. I love that as a fan to like,
it
look
makes
at
these projects more interesting.
Yeah, because you can see what might have been, and like how much things did change and what Shane Black and Schwarzenegger brought to the table when they were included in the development of it.
So, having worked for both Dark Horse and Marvel in the past, how do you feel about this shift in licensing going to Marvel? Especially working in the industry yourself.
Yeah, it's. Like you guys said, it felt like it was inevitable. I guess it makes me sad because I have, Dark Horse is sort of family. I've worked with them for so long that I felt like they were just doing, such a good job, and that being able to do something like Thicker Than Blood, which was a little bit different, I was like, okay, well, maybe with we're going to head off in another direction here that could be really exciting. I don't know. We'll have to see what Marvel does with it. If it becomes like Alien versus X-Men, I don't know. I don't know what that's going to be. So it's bittersweet. I'm curious to see what they're going to do with it. And they, so many talented people work for Marvel, so they'll probably put a good team on it. But yeah, I'm sad for Dark Horse.
Having ties with them anyway, do you, think it's likely perhaps you could return? Would you be interested in returning for something else?
Yeah, sure. If they ask me to. I think the thing with Marvel is that they come to you. If they like what you've done, they approach you. I don't even know who the editor is on these books now.
I do.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I think that's been our main concern with the Marvel acquisition, is just that are they going to tell as bold of stories as Dark Horse did?
Yeah.
Dark Horse also had their, more kind of run-of-the-mill Alien, Predator, and AvP stories, but they also had a number of ones that were really bold and different, like the one you did.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of stories we would like to see, at least occasionally, done with Marvel. And I'm sure they will do the crossovers. I hope they go.
Yeah. Well, they did that with Conan. Like suddenly they took the Conan license, and suddenly Conan's in the Avengers. So we'll see. Have a Predator on the Avengers next.
It's Jake Thomas.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. The sad thing about of the many sad things about the pandemics is there have been no comic book conventions anymore. So usually those are where you go and shake hands and meet an editor.
Networking.
Yeah. So if there was an opportunity for that, I would go talk to them. But we'll see. Yeah, absolutely. I love these franchises so much. I would do something. I wouldn't do Thicker Than Blood 2. I would come up with something different. But
so you don't want to tell us if Tyler survives?
I like that you guys decide for yourselves, like I like that. Okay, well, I will say in my mind, I'm the optimist. Like I really like the idea of him becoming Maria's son and then grandson. And
did he always get picked up by what did you say his nickname was? Hook. Did he always get picked up by Hook?
That was always. I always wanted that to be the ending. I always wanted it to be, Hook's nod to Maria that like you are an honorable fighter. Like it's a sign of respect. I know that this being is important to you, and so he didn't. Hook didn't have to do that, but he dragged her out of the forest fire and set her up in front of the lifeboat. And I don't think Hook cares whether or not Tyler gets repaired, but he knows that it's important to her, and so that was kind of a gesture. Yeah, that was always part of it.
I was just going to say, as far as the ship being destroyed at the end, was that just the forest fire had gotten out of control, even with sprinklers? Or
it was. Yeah, I really, and again, I liked the visual of the two ships, of the Predator ship and the lifeboat flying off in opposite directions while the luxury ship blew up in the background. I couldn't resist it. And also, Maria now has insurance money, so she can
right.
She can fix her brother.
That'll be an interesting claim to make. I did like the shot where you see her on the cockpit and then it goes the Predator in his cockpit.
Again, that's like the repetition of imagery that I really like about comics, that you can lay something out that it just is a mirror of itself. And again, Doug, when we had talked about doing this interview, I was thinking about like what I've added. And for a moment I was thinking like maybe I should have had that stupid bird behind Hook's shoulder, in that last shot.
That would have been funny. Did the bird did the bird survive the alien? I can't remember.
Yeah, it escapes. Like the other idea that I didn't get into is that everybody on the ship hates that bird. Like it attacks Tyler, when he comes down from the ship, and the alien, the xenomorph hates it and can't catch it, and that's why it's chasing it around the lab. That the bird's a piece of crap.
Was there anybody left alive on that ship when it blew up?
I don't just the bird, I think. Yeah, I liked, I liked the idea of the Predators, mostly Splitter, the one with the whip, just going like level by level and just cleaning the place out.
So the whip was an interesting choice as well, because that's what AVPR, and we've seen that in
the mobile game AvP
Evolution.
I think those are the only occurrences of the Razor Whip.
So was that
it's one of my favorite Predator weapons. So
I just thought it was cool. The way Doug designed it, I just described it as an electric whip, like a razor whip, but Doug gave it that cool design, that it almost looks like a xenomorph tail.
So was that not conscious on your part, callback to Requiem?
No, I hadn't even thought of it. I mean, now that you mention it, I liked I just wanted him to have a razor whip. I just really liked the idea of each of them. Hook has got that ridiculous wrist blade, that like ridiculously long wrist blade that I'd had plans for that to come up again later, but I couldn't find an idea for it. And then Doug did the genius thing. I don't know if you guys caught this, but when Splitter, the younger Predator, comes to get Hook out of the elevator, there are all those scratch marks on the door that it looks like the Predator had tried to free himself before he passed out. Okay. That was all Doug, and I just thought, oh man, what a nice touch.
Yeah, it was kind of cool how he cauterized the wounds with
the whip.
Razor whip. But the design of the whip is pretty much what it was in AvP.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't electrified in that movie, but
okay, so that might have been Doug. That might have been a touch from Doug, where he was just doing a nod to that.
The whole elevator bit as well was another one of those damn moments. Because when it happened, when you were talking about the reactions to issue by issue, as you're taking it. That's why I don't like doing. Once upon a time, I tried reviewing issue by issue, and I didn't like doing it because you don't have a complete story. So your reactions, your reactions don't necessarily equate to what the entire experience is. But when that bit happened, it was like, the initial reaction is, oh shit.
That's like,
oh, is he dead already?
Yeah.
And then you come back to it, and he gets everything cut off and cauterized, and it just keeps going. It's like, Jesus Christ, these guys are taking an absolute goddamn beating.
Yeah, that's what I wanted. I knew that we were going to have a crippled predator, and so I just had to figure out how that was going to happen. And go ahead.
I was just going to say, personally speaking, it's one of the things I've always wanted to see is, this idea of a predator that had come through a previous battle and was augmented somehow. Maybe he had a Captain Hook hand.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
Yeah, I was hoping. Yeah, I actually, there was a part of me toward the end too where I was like, man, if they make action figures of these predators, which would be awesome. Is this Hook one going to look dumb? Maybe I should have given him a better prosthetic or something. But yeah, I'm with you. I love the idea of
that would be a cool idea, though. I mean, if there ever was a sequel with augmented, like he has a robot arm and a robot leg.
Yeah. Well, he survived. He's out there. He's kicking around.
That's actually everything from us. But before we let you escape, is there anything you'd like to share? Any anecdote or thought that we just haven't given you the opportunity to with any of our questions so far?
I think we've covered pretty much everything. I just want to just say that I appreciate you guys having me on. It's good to doing this is such a solitary job. And like I said, I finished this story in 2019. So there's a lot of space for me between finishing the story and sending it off and sort of crossing my fingers and hoping people like it. And then actually, interacting with you guys and hearing that okay, yeah, it landed, it worked. So I really appreciate this. I appreciate this conversation and thanks.
Yeah, we really appreciate having you on as well. And thanks for making such an awesome comic. And we really hope to see your Predator story one of these days.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Do you have any particular social outlets or perhaps your website that you want to shout out for people?
I'm not on social media because it's bad for me because I can't get off of it, And people, I used to be on all of it, and people are jerks online a lot of times, so I just don't need it. So no, I just have my website, which is jeremybarlow.com, which there's a link to my Amazon author page, which has all my books. I'm terrible at self-promotion, which is not great for my career, but so that's there. And then, there's a link to my email address if anybody wants to get in touch that way. But yeah, that's it. And just keep an eye out for James Cameron's Avatar next month.
I would be sure to give that one a read, as well as your Star Wars comic. I want to check that one out.
Oh, yeah. Darth Maul, Son of Dad. Do you guys watch The Mandalorian?
Oh,
I've been waiting to watch second season because I like watching it all the way.
It's good. So there's stuff in my Darth Maul book that ties into The Mandalorian with the Darksaber and the Mandalorian. So, there's that. And then Rebels. I don't know if you ever watched Star Wars Rebels, the animated series, but there's a lot of Mandalorian backstory in that's worth checking out.
Yeah. So through Sabine, isn't it?
Yeah.
See, I'm not a massive Star Wars fan, but Mandalorian.
Oh man, it's so good. It is brilliant. So good.
I really enjoyed the first season. I'm looking forward to.
I love it. You're gonna love it. Second season just I think elevates everything they did in the first season. That was great. They're just we're gonna do more, do better.
It's proven that Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau aren't fluking it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so good. Yeah. So yeah, that's it for me.
Okay, and we end the AvP Galaxy podcast on a Star Wars note. If Avatar. If you haven't already, and for some reason you've spoiled the hell out of it, go and buy Thicker Than Blood. I probably should have done a spoiler warning at the start of this.
Maybe you still can. And remember, it's going out of print, so get it while you can.
Oh yeah, it'll be a collector's piece soon.
Yeah.
Until hopefully Marvel,
fingers crossed,
put it out there again.
We have our website, which has a message board and discussions there among our community, and you can find us at avpgalaxy.net is our main website, and we're on all the major socials: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. If you search AvP Galaxy or Alien vs Predator Galaxy, you're sure to find us. So this is Aaron and Adam, and this is Jeremy. And where's Chris Hansen when you need him? Thank you. Yeah. Thank you guys. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, absolutely. This has been great.